I turned 33 that Saturday evening in my home on Queen and Hill in Seattle, Washington. The air smelled of vanilla, cinnamon, and fresh lilies that my friend Lena had brought from Pike Place Market earlier that morning. The dining table shimmered under the glow of soft golden lights. My boyfriend, Michael Grant, stood by the counter pouring sparkling cider into tall glasses while my parents, Margaret and Daniel Hart, chatted quietly near the window, their voices carrying the kind of nervousness that comes before an important announcement. Lena placed the chocolate cake in the center of the table and began lighting the candles. "Make a wish," she said, smiling. I laughed, brushed a strand of hair behind my ear, and looked around at the people I loved most. It felt like an ordinary birthday until my sister, Sophie, walked in. She arrived late, as always, the click of her high heels echoing against the oak floor. Her entrance drew every pair of eyes toward her. Sophie had that effect on people. She always carried herself like she was stepping onto a stage. She was wearing a deep red dress and holding a gift bag from Nordstrom. For a moment, I thought she might actually be here in good spirits. But I saw the way her gaze darted between me and our parents, and my stomach tightened. Something was coming. Dad cleared his throat, and the quiet that followed was heavy. "Before we cut the cake," he began, "there's something your mother and I need to share." He exchanged a glance with Mom, who nodded. Then, in his calm, measured voice, he said, "We've finalized the transfer of the Ballard House and the Chelan Lake property to your name, Harper. It's all been legally processed. Caroline Price, our attorney, handled the paperwork. We wanted to do this next week, but we thought your birthday would be a good time to tell you." For a heartbeat, the room froze. Even the flickering candles seemed to hold still. Sophie's face went pale, then flushed deep red. "What?" she said, her voice cracking. "You gave her both properties?" Dad nodded. "It's for simplicity, Sophie. Harper has been managing the maintenance, paying taxes, and organizing everything for years. It's only right she's in charge." Sophie laughed bitterly. "You've got to be kidding me. She manipulated you. She's always been sneaky with money." I opened my mouth to speak, but before I could say a word, she reached across the table, grabbed the cake with both hands, and shoved it straight into my face. The cold frosting smeared across my cheeks and nose, the sweet smell of chocolate filling my breath. Gasps filled the room. Lena dropped her fork, and Michael stood frozen. My parents were speechless. Sophie's voice rose with fury. "That property is mine. You tricked them, Harper. You always wanted to take everything." Then she stormed out, heels pounding against the hardwood, the front door slamming so hard it rattled the picture frames on the wall. For a moment, no one spoke. The frosting was sliding down my chin, and I couldn't tell whether to laugh or cry. I walked to the kitchen sink, turned on the tap, and washed my face in silence. When I looked up in the mirror above the sink, I didn't see humiliation. I saw calm. Mom came up behind me, eyes glossy. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. We didn't mean to cause a scene." Dad stood beside her, sighing. "It was my decision, Harper. You've earned it. You've carried this family more times than anyone realizes." Michael placed a towel in my hands. "You okay?" I nodded. "I'm fine." Lena, ever the peacekeeper, tried to lighten the mood. "The cake's a mess, but we still have cookies," she said softly. We gathered again at the table, the laughter gone, replaced by quiet sips of cider and the crunch of cookies. When the night ended and everyone had left, I went upstairs and opened the safe in my walk-in closet. Inside sat a thick white binder with embossed gold letters, Hart Family Living Trust. I carried it to my desk, opened it, and began reading. The documents were perfectly organized, titles, deeds, and notarized signatures. The Ballard House was valued at around $1.2 million, fully paid off. The Chelan Lake House, smaller but beautiful, was worth roughly $850,000. There was also mention of a maintenance fund, $35,000 set aside for roof repairs and landscaping. At the back, I found a note from my grandmother in London, written before she passed away. She had left me a small inheritance in pounds, £90,000, held in a UK account. For emergencies or improvements, she had written. I smiled faintly at the familiar handwriting. Everything was legal. Every page bore signatures, seals, and recorded dates. There was nothing deceptive about it. My parents had simply made a choice. I closed the binder, rested my palm on it, and felt the weight of what it meant. This wasn't just property, it was the acknowledgement of years of effort. I had managed their bills when Dad fell ill. I had paid overdue property taxes when Mom forgot. I had spent weekends cleaning the lake house, patching roofs, and handling tenants who refused to pay rent on time. Sophie had never lifted a finger for any of it. She liked appearances, the designer clothes, the photos at the lake, the dinners, but not the responsibility behind them. I turned off the light and walked to my window. The night sky over Seattle was misty, the Space Needle faint in the distance. I could hear faint music from a nearby rooftop bar and the soft hum of traffic below. As I stood there, I realized something. Sophie's anger wasn't really about money or houses. It was about control. She had always been the one who demanded attention, the one who wanted to decide who got what. And now, for once, she couldn't. I brushed my hair, changed into pajamas, and slipped under the blankets. The binder sat on my nightstand, its pages safe and solid. For years, I had lived as if I needed to apologize for being responsible, for being the one who kept things running. But not anymore. That night, I dreamed of the lake house. I saw myself sitting on the porch with a mug of coffee, watching the water shimmer in the morning light. No shouting, no chaos, no guilt, just peace. I didn't know what Sophie would do next, but I knew I was ready for it. Because I wasn't the thief she called me. I was the rightful owner. The one who carried the family through storms while she danced in the sunlight. And for the first time in years, I fell asleep smiling, not because everything was perfect, but because everything was finally mine, fair and clear. The next morning arrived gray and slow, the kind of Seattle morning that makes the whole sky look like brushed steel. I woke early, long before my alarm, and sat on the edge of my bed with a cup of coffee warming my hands. The silence of the house felt different now. The night before, it had been the silence of hurt. Today it felt like the silence of decision. I dialed Caroline Price, our family's estate attorney. Her voice came calm and steady, as it always did. I expected a reaction, she said after I told her about the cake and Sophie's outburst. Don't worry, Harper. Everything's recorded, witnessed, and filed. You just keep the originals locked up. I'll have certified copies waiting for you at the office. By noon, I was downtown, the drizzle turning the sidewalks glossy beneath my boots. Caroline's office sat near Pike Place Market, overlooking Elliott Bay. Through the window, ferries glided through a fog that made the horizon disappear. Inside, the air smelled of paper, coffee, and that faint scent of lemon polish used to keep wood desks shining. Caroline greeted me with her usual poise, a navy suit, silver-framed glasses, and a voice that carried quiet authority. Two of her associates were already there. Eric Shaw, tall with the precise energy of someone who'd never missed a deadline, and Mia Collins, whose kind eyes softened every legal term she spoke. Everything's in order, Caroline said, handing me a sleek leather folder embossed with gold initials, HFLT for Hart Family Living Trust. This one's yours. This one, she said, handing a second to Eric, stays here. She opened the file, walking me through each page. Every property, every transfer, every line had been properly filed with the King County Recorder's Office. The Ballard home and the Chelan Lake house were listed under the trust, naming me as the current trustee and my parents as lifetime beneficiaries. Caroline explained the order of succession. If anything happened to me, she would serve as temporary trustee before the role passed to Pastor James Nolan, an old family friend who lived 2 blocks away from my parents. It all felt official, solid, real. But beneath that assurance was a flicker of fear. Can Sophie undo any of this? I asked, trying to sound casual. Caroline shook her head. She can make noise, Harper, but that's all. Your parents signed everything voluntarily. I was there along with 2 witnesses. We recorded the documents. There's a timeline of maintenance records, payments you made, and receipts in your name. It's airtight. She reached for another folder and handed me a letter written in my parents' handwriting. My chest tightened as I read it. We, Margaret and Daniel Hart, confirm that our decision to place both the Ballard and Chelan properties in Harper's name is entirely voluntary. She has managed our affairs, paid property taxes, and maintained both homes for years without request or compensation. This transfer is a recognition of her continued responsibility and reliability, and no coercion of any kind has taken place. I could see Dad's bold signature, then Mom's neat cursive beneath it. I swallowed hard. "Keep that with your personal file," Caroline said softly. "It's not required, but it strengthens your position if this ever gets questioned." For the next hour, we reviewed every supporting document. She had gathered proof of every payment I'd made over the years. Checks to contractors, proof of utilities, insurance renewals, even the roof inspection invoice I'd paid last winter when Sophie refused to help. Then Caroline mentioned something I hadn't expected. There's an emergency fund built into the trust, around $120,000. I suggest we move $25,000 into a repair reserve for the lake house before winter hits. The roof work you scheduled will likely need a deposit soon. I nodded. Let's do that. Eric drafted the transfer order while Mia prepared the banking forms. I signed each page, initials neat and careful. It all felt strangely empowering. Every stroke of the pen like reclaiming a piece of control I hadn't realized I'd lost over the years. When it was done, Caroline leaned back and smiled. "You've done well, Harper. You've handled this responsibly. Don't let guilt change that." I thanked her, gathered the folder, and left the office with the rain falling harder now, tapping against my umbrella like a rhythm of resolve. On my drive home, I took a detour through Ballard. The trees along the streets had turned a deep burnt orange and fallen leaves piled against the curbs. I slowed down as I passed the old house, the home I grew up in. The wooden fence I had painted with Mom when I was 12 still stood, though weathered. The bay window I'd decorated with paper snowflakes every December reflected the gray sky. I parked across the street and just looked for a while. I remembered Dad teaching me to shovel the walkway after the first snow, Sophie standing inside the doorway, complaining that her nails would chip if she helped. I remembered late summer nights sitting on that porch with a bowl of cherries, dreaming about moving into the city. Funny how life had turned. The girl who once wanted to escape this place now carried its deeds under her name. I drove off before anyone could notice me sitting there. I wasn't here to prove anything to the past. I was here to protect the future. Back home, I placed the binder in my safe again, but this time, I added the letter from my parents to the top. Then I poured myself another coffee, sat by the window, and opened my laptop to update my spreadsheet, the one that tracked every expense, repair, and tax bill for both properties. I logged the new transfer and adjusted the maintenance fund balance. Numbers had always brought me calm. They didn't argue, didn't scream, didn't throw cake. Just before dusk, Mom called. She sounded tired but warm. "I spoke with Caroline," she said. "She told me you handled everything beautifully today." "Thanks, Mom. I hope you know we did this because we trust you. Your father and I wanted peace, not division." I paused. "I know." There was a long silence before she added. "Sophie came by earlier. She's angry, but she'll calm down. Just be careful for a while." "I will." After the call ended, I stared out at the darkening skyline. The lights of downtown flickered through the mist. I could almost see the reflection of my own face in the glass, steady, determined, older somehow. In that quiet moment, I realized the truth. This wasn't just about property or paperwork. It was about proving to myself that I could carry responsibility without apology. That being the quiet one didn't mean being the weak one. I closed the blinds, locked the safe, and turned off the lights. The rain outside kept falling, steady and soft. And somewhere in that rhythm, I felt it, the certainty that no matter what storm Sophie tried to stir next, I was ready. The papers were real. The proof was solid. The story was mine now, and this time, I wasn't giving it away. The afternoon after meeting with Caroline felt oddly peaceful. I spent the morning sorting receipts and sending a thank you email to her team. The sky outside my queen and home hung heavy and gray, typical of Seattle, but I didn't mind. The rain had always calmed me. I'd just poured a second cup of coffee when the doorbell rang. When I checked the security camera, my heart dropped. Sophie stood on my porch in a deep red coat, flanked by two uniformed officers. Her chin was lifted, her expression almost smug. I could see my neighbor, Mrs. Whitaker, peeking through her hedge, whispering into her phone, probably calling her sister to spread the news that something was happening at the Hart girls' house. I took a slow breath. I already knew this day would come. The lawyer's team had arrived 10 minutes earlier, anticipating trouble. Caroline sat in my dining room, reviewing a folder. Eric, one of her associates, was near the hallway, and Mia had her notepad ready. Everything was in order, calm, and professional. When I opened the front door, I felt a strange steadiness settle in me. Sophie didn't waste time. "Officers," she said loudly, pointing at me as if I were a criminal. "That's her. The one who forged the property documents. I need you to retrieve the house keys from her. My parents' properties belong to me, not her." Officer Reed, a tall man with kind eyes, raised his hand to quiet her. "Ma'am, let's keep our voices down," he said evenly. "We just need to understand what's going on. She stole our family's houses." Sophie snapped. "The one in Ballard and the lake property. She lied to my parents and made them sign papers they didn't understand." I didn't move. I simply looked at Caroline, who stepped forward with the composure of someone who had done this 1,000 times. "Good afternoon, officers," she said, handing them her card. "I'm Caroline Price, the family's estate attorney. This matter is already documented with the King County Recorder's Office. I have certified copies of every relevant document right here." She opened the folder and presented the stack: the trust documents, the recorded deeds, the notarized signatures, and a letter signed by both my parents confirming their decision. She even included her own bar license and a copy of the recording receipt from the county office. Officer Alvarez, the younger of the two, flipped through the pages. "These look official," he said quietly. "Everything's notarized and recorded." "They're fake," Sophie blurted. She tricked them. They didn't mean to give her everything. Caroline didn't even blink. The documents were executed under legal supervision, with 2 independent witnesses. Both your parents are fully competent and have verified their signatures under oath. This transfer is part of a living trust, not a secret will. Everything here is lawful and transparent. The officers exchanged a glance. Officer Reed looked at me. "Are your parents available to confirm this?" "Yes," Caroline said before I could answer. "They're at an appointment at Virginia Mason right now, but you're welcome to call them." Officer Reed pulled out his phone and dialed the number listed on the document. I could hear my mother's familiar voice on the speaker. "Yes, this is Margaret Hart," she said. "Everything is correct. We gave Harper full ownership and trustee rights. It's not a misunderstanding." "Thank you, ma'am," the officer replied, then handed the phone to my father. Dad's tone was firm. "This was my decision. Harper's been handling our affairs responsibly for years. It's time she had control of what she already manages." When the call ended, Sophie looked as if she'd been struck. Her eyes darted between the officers and me, confusion and anger mixing into one trembling glare. "You don't understand," she said, her voice breaking. "She's manipulating them. They don't know what they're signing." Caroline spoke again, calm and unshaken. "Your parents have confirmed the trust. The county has validated the recordings. This is no longer a matter for law enforcement, Ms. Hart. It's a civil issue, and if you wish to challenge it, you'll need to do so through probate court. But I'll advise you not to waste the filing fee." Sophie's mouth fell open. "You're threatening me?" "Not at all," Caroline replied. "Just informing you of the law." Officer Reed closed the folder and handed it back to Caroline. "Ms. Hart," he said to Sophie, "from what we can see, this appears to be a civil matter, not a criminal one. The paperwork looks legitimate, and your parents have confirmed it. We won't be removing any keys or property from your sister." Sophie's face reddened. "So, you're just going to let her keep everything?" "Ma'am," Reed said kindly, "if you believe there's been wrongdoing, You can hire your own attorney. But right now, she's the legal trustee. There's nothing for us to enforce." The words hit Sophie harder than I expected. She stood frozen for a moment, lips pressed tight, her hand clutching the strap of her purse. Then, slowly, she turned her glare on me. "You've always played innocent," she said softly, though her voice shook. "Always the quiet one. Always acting like you're better. How does it feel to win by lying?" I didn't answer. There was nothing to say. She took one step forward, but Officer Alvarez gently guided her back. "Let's go, ma'am." Sophie's jaw clenched. She glanced past me into the house. From where she stood, she could see Michael in the kitchen and Lena sitting at the table, her phone resting beside a cup of coffee. The sight seemed to ignite something deeper, maybe jealousy, maybe disbelief. She looked back at me, eyes glassy. "How could the quiet one win?" she whispered, almost to herself. Then she turned, walked down the steps, and disappeared into her car. The moment her engine faded down the street, the weight I hadn't even realized I'd been holding lifted. I shut the door and leaned my forehead against it, exhaling slowly. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from release. Caroline placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "You handle that perfectly," she said. "Calm and precise. That's how you win." We sat together at the dining table as she unpacked her folder again, this time for my reference. She handed me a checklist written in her neat handwriting. "Here's what comes next," she said. The list was simple. 1. Change the access codes at both houses. 2. Confirm the lake house roof repair date. 3. Schedule an updated appraisal for both properties. 4. Move £10,000 from the UK account to the maintenance reserve. 5. Arrange a time for Sophie to collect personal items with a neutral witness. 6. Send flowers and a thank you note to your parents. I looked at the paper and smiled faintly. "I can handle this by Friday." Caroline nodded, gathering her things. "Good. Keep your peace, Harper. You've already won where it matters, on paper and in truth." When they left, the house felt quiet again. Outside, the rain had turned soft, tapping gently against the windows. I walked to the living room, sat on the couch, and stared at the binder on my table. It wasn't just a set of legal papers. It was proof that being steady, organized, and patient had finally paid off. For years, I'd watched Sophie's chaos get rewarded with attention, while my consistency went unnoticed. But now, the world had even the scales. For the first time in my life, I didn't need anyone to believe me. The law already did. A week later, the steady rhythm of construction echoed across the quiet shoreline of Lake Chelan. The roof crew had arrived early, their hammers and drills blending with the hum of the water. I stood on the porch of the lake house, coffee in hand, watching the mist lift off the lake surface. The air smelled of cedar and rain. For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to peace. The repairs were part of my new routine. Every morning, I managed emails, logged invoices, and tracked progress on my spreadsheet. I approved the first contractor draw of $12,500 for the roof and arranged a deposit for the new dock repairs. Numbers comforted me. They didn't lie, didn't argue, didn't twist the truth the way people sometimes did. Later that day, the appraiser sent his report. The Ballard house was now valued at $1.25 million, a small increase after the interior updates I had paid for last spring. I called the insurance company and raised the coverage by $50,000 to match. The UK bank also confirmed the £10,000 transfer from my grandmother's account. Every column balanced neatly. Truth in rows and columns that had become my kind of peace. Just as I was settling into the new normal, Caroline called. "Your sister reached out," she said. "She wants to collect her personal items from the Ballard house. I suggest doing it this week while tensions are still cooling." I agreed, though a quiet dread stirred in my stomach. Caroline arranged for Mia, her associate, to act as a neutral witness. Sophie would bring our cousin Mark Evans for support. We scheduled the visit for Saturday morning. That morning arrived cold and overcast. I drove to Ballard early, unlocking the familiar front door that once opened to birthday dinners, Christmas mornings, and late-night arguments. The smell of old wood and lavender floor polish filled the air. For a brief moment, I remembered running through this hallway as a child, my laughter echoing against the walls. Mia arrived first, clipboard in hand, professional and kind. "We'll keep it civil," she said softly. "Just focus on facts." When Sophie and Mark arrived, I braced myself. She looked tired but defiant, her lips pressed tight, as if holding back words she might regret. Mark offered a polite nod, clearly uncomfortable to be caught between us. We started in the kitchen. I told Sophie she could take any personal items that were hers before the trust transfer. She picked up the red mixer from the counter, the one she bought years ago for a failed baking hobby, and placed it in a box. Then she found a small tin of postcards from our grandfather's trips across Europe and held them tightly. "These were mine," she said quietly. I nodded. "They're yours." But when her eyes landed on the antique silver tea set displayed in the cabinet, I knew what was coming. "That's Mom's," I said gently before she could reach for it. Sophie turned, the defiance flickering again. She said I could have had it years ago. Mia stepped forward, calm as ever. "The tea set is listed in the trust inventory as your mother's separate property," she said, showing Sophie the document. "It's not eligible for transfer." For a moment, Sophie's hand hovered in midair, then fell back to her side. The fight drained from her face, replaced by something softer, maybe regret, maybe exhaustion. She placed the postcards in her tote bag and said nothing more. We moved through the rest of the house in silence. She took a few framed photos from her old bedroom and a jewelry box from the dresser. When we finished, she stood in the living room, looking around as if memorizing the place. "Would you ever sell this house?" she asked suddenly. Her tone wasn't angry this time, just curious, maybe even hopeful. "Not while Mom and Dad are alive," I said. "The trust makes me responsible for both properties for their benefit. It's not just about ownership, it's about duty." She hesitated, then smiled faintly. "I could buy the lake house from you, maybe at a family price." I shook my head. "It's not mine to sell yet. The trust keeps everything tied until after their time. If you want a place near the lake, I'll help you find one. A smaller cabin, maybe, but the family home stays where it is." Her expression flickered, disappointment mixed with something that almost looked like understanding. She shrugged lightly. "You always were the practical one." When they left, Mia signed the witness form and handed me a copy. "You handled that beautifully," she said. "Firm, but fair." I smiled. "It's all I can do." That evening, back in my Queen and house, I placed the updated inventory in the binder and locked it in my safe. Michael was in the kitchen preparing pasta. He glanced over and asked if my shoulders still hurt from the week's stress. "Better," I said, stretching them out. "I think I'm finally breathing again." Lena texted a picture of a small lemon cake she'd baked just for me, writing, "No frosting in your face this time, I promise." I laughed out loud, a sound that felt good in my chest. Later, Mom called. "Your father and I are proud of how you've handled all this," she said. "You've brought stability to the family again." "Thanks, Mom. I just want things calm." "They will be," she promised. "We can finally rest easy knowing everything's in good hands." After the call, I stood at the window, overlooking Elliott Bay. The city lights shimmered across the water like scattered stars. I thought about how far I'd come in just a few weeks, from birthday chaos and flying cake to legal calm and quiet control. It hadn't been easy, but it had been necessary. I still carried a small ache, though. I wish my birthday hadn't ended in humiliation. I wish my sister had said my name with affection instead of anger. But life rarely gives us perfect endings. It gives us lessons wrapped in moments of chaos. As I sipped my tea, I realized something profound. I wasn't angry anymore. The binder, the deeds, the trust, they weren't just about property. They were about validation. They proved that patience and integrity could outlast noise and manipulation. I had spent years believing that strength meant confrontation, that I had to fight for every inch of fairness. But true strength, I learned, sometimes looks like silence, like standing still while the storm exhausts itself. That night, as I turned off the lights and let the house fall quiet, I smiled to myself. I had 2 homes under my care now, a lake house with a new roof, and a city home filled with peace. The numbers matched, the accounts balanced, and the world finally felt steady. On my birthday, I learned that love without respect feels hollow. But when the door opened that next day and my lawyer's team stood beside me, I learned that respect, once earned, cannot be taken away. The police left because there was nothing false to find. And I stayed because everything here, every brick, every paper, every quiet corner, was mine to protect. For the first time in years, the silence in my house wasn't loneliness. It was peace.